All right, let's talk about one of the greatest stories ever told. You know the one. It's got war, it's got heroes, and it's got a giant wooden horse. Today, we're going to dig in and find out what's real and what's legend when it comes to the city of Troy.
So, the Trojan War, right? An epic story about a 10-year war fought over a stolen queen. Love, honor, and, of course, that brilliant trick with the wooden horse. We all know the story, but how much of it is actually true? Was any of it real?
Okay, so let's start with the legend itself. For thousands of years, pretty much everything we knew about this war came from one place, Homer's epic poem, the Iliad. And believe me, it all starts with a divine argument that leads to let's just say, a very, very bad decision.
And here's where things really spiral out of control. You've got this mythological spat, and suddenly it turns into a full-blown, world-changing war. Paris, he takes the bribe, sails over to Sparta, and just takes Helen. That one move, it's enough to launch 1,000 ships and pit the Achaeans, the Greeks, against the city of Troy in a brutal siege that would last for 10 long years.
And I mean, this thing dragged on for 10 years. You had these two massive armies, led by the greatest heroes of the age, guys like Achilles and Hector, locked in this bloody, brutal stalemate. Neither side could get the upper hand.
So, after 10 years of getting nowhere, the Greeks finally get clever. The hero Odysseus comes up with this absolute masterstroke. The plan? They pretend to give up. They pack up, sail away, and leave behind this enormous wooden horse, a supposed offering to the gods. The Trojans, they think they've won. They drag this gift inside their supposedly unbreakable walls, and, well, that's it. It was a fatal mistake. That night, the city falls in a wave of slaughter. The war is over.
But then, silence. The age of heroes ended. And Troy, it just kind of faded away. It went from being a place on a map to something you'd only hear about in stories. And for centuries, that's exactly what everyone thought it was. A great story, yeah, but just a story. But that question just wouldn't go away. Did Troy actually exist? Could this incredible story be based on a real place, a real war? People were obsessed with this idea for centuries. And then, finally, one man decided he was going to be the one to find out. And that man's name was Heinrich Schliemann. Now, Schliemann wasn't your typical scholar. He was a rich businessman who had been obsessed with the story of Troy since he was a little kid. And he had this wild idea. What if the Iliad wasn't just a poem? What if it was a map? A literal treasure map to a lost city. So Schliemann goes to Turkey, finds a promising spot, and starts digging. And, well, his methods were, to put it mildly, a complete disaster. We're talking about a guy who used dynamite to blast his way through the site, tearing a giant trench right through the middle of it all. He destroyed so much priceless history. Why? He was looking for treasure, gold. And he found it and smuggled it right out of the country. But for all the damage he did, he proved one absolutely massive thing. Troy was real. But here's the twist. Schliemann wasn't just looking for one city. And he didn't find one city. What he and the archaeologists who came after him, the ones who were, a lot more careful, found was something way more complex. And honestly, way more fascinating than the legend.
Imagine a layer cake of history. That's literally what Troy is. It's not one city. It's 9. 9 different cities, built one right on top of the other, on the exact same spot, over a mind-boggling 3,000 years.
And just look at this timeline. It really shows you the incredible story of this place. It starts out as this small settlement way back in the Bronze Age. Then it grows into a rich, powerful city. Later, it becomes this massive fortress with incredible walls. And it doesn't stop there. Eventually, it becomes a Greek city and then a grand Roman metropolis, a tourist destination for emperors.
All right, so that brings us to the big question, right? If the Trojan War was a real event, which one of these 9 Troys was the Troy? Which city saw Achilles and Hector fighting outside its walls?
Well, for a while, archaeologists had 2 main suspects. First up, you've got Troy Phi 6. This place was big, it was grand, and it had these massive walls that totally fit Homer's descriptions. Perfect, right? Except it looks like it was destroyed by an earthquake, not a war. Then you have Troy Phi 7. It was built on the ruins of Troy Phi 6, and while it wasn't as magnificent, the story its ruins tell is much, much darker. And today, most experts are pointing their fingers directly at Troy v. Aya. The case is pretty strong. The evidence shows a city that was violently destroyed, right around 1184 BCE, which is the exact traditional date for the war. You find evidence of fire, of slaughter. You can tell people were crammed inside the walls like they were under siege, and the smoking gun might actually come from somewhere else entirely. See, records from the neighboring Hittite Empire talk about a big conflict with a city called Wilusa, and linguists are pretty sure that Wilusa is just the Hittite way of saying Ilios, which is another Greek name for Troy. Boom. But the story of Troy doesn't end with its destruction in the Bronze Age. Not even close. In fact, you could say that's when its real story began. The power of the legend gave this fallen city a whole new life, turning it into one of the most important places in the ancient world. Think about it. Some of the greatest conquerors in history made pilgrimages here. Alexander the Great, before he set off to conquer the Persian Empire, he made a special stop at Troy. He actually went to the supposed tomb of Achilles to pay his respects, looking for inspiration from the original Greek hero before starting his own legendary campaign. And then you've got the Romans. Oh man, they took it to a whole other level. They built their entire national identity around the idea that they were descended from a Trojan hero named Aeneas, who escaped the burning city. It was their origin story. Leaders like Julius Caesar and the Emperor Augustus would visit Troy, pour money into rebuilding it, and treat it like their sacred ancestral home. And this legacy just keeps going. Fast forward hundreds and hundreds of years. It's 1453. The Ottoman Sultan, Mehmet the Conqueror, has just captured Constantinople, the heart of the Greek world. And what does he do? He goes to the ruins of Troy. And he declares that by conquering the Greeks, he, a ruler from Asia, had finally gotten revenge for the Trojans. That's how powerful this story still was.
So here's what you really got to take away from all this. The true power of Troy isn't about the piles of stone left behind. It's about the idea of Troy. It's about what that story has meant to people for 3,000 years. It became a symbol for everything: epic wars, tragic loss, heroic origins, even ultimate revenge. It's the perfect example of how a story can become even more powerful, even more real than the place it came from.
What the story of Troy really shows us is that the line between myth and history is, well, it's a lot blurrier than we think. We have a real place, almost certainly a real war, that gave birth to one of the most powerful legends in human history. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other legends are actually true? How many of our greatest stories are just sitting there, buried right under our feet, waiting for someone to find them?